Alrighty, welcome back to another exciting episode of This Dev Life. This is a podcast where we talk to developers and we talk about challenges developers face every day and how we overcome these challenges. On today's episode, we have someone interesting, someone you probably know, probably don't know, or probably will get to know. He's the one and only Scott Hanselman. Hey Scott, how you doing?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very, very, very well. Thanks very much for asking. Yeah, so we got Scott on the show today. He's our honored guest, and thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for agreeing on. No, I actually thought when we invited you, it was gonna take like, oh, I'm available only in 6 months, and then I was like, I checked the booking, and then I'm like, it's available in January. Like, okay, book it in.
I'm pretty
So
easy. People always think like, oh, I'll talk to you next year or whatever. Like, I mean, being busy, like being too busy means you're not organized. If someone is too
true.
busy to like pick up the phone, or if your mom calls you and they're like, I didn't want to bother you, you're too busy. You're giving off busy vibes. I feel like I can be busy, but I can also be intentional with my time. And I haven't talked to you in a while, so it was important to make the time. So it was my pleasure.
That's very true. That's very true. Because the impression that most people have, if you're like that exec up there in vice president at Microsoft, like that level, you probably need to book an appointment months ahead. But then, well, maybe you're the exception, or maybe it's the way with everybody.
Well, I believe very strongly in being intentional and being deliberate, and I don't like to be on my phone all the time, checking email all the time. So I block time out really specifically, and I have focus time, like an hour a day of nothing. And it might be me working and focusing, but it's also for opportunities like this to hang out with you. If I had my entire life from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. scheduled, then I wouldn't have time for serendipity, right? And when you and Bademi email me and like, hey, let's hang out, this is serendipitous. So I want to take advantage of that. So I always have time for these kinds of things.
Amazing. And that's one of the things we'll actually be talking about on today's show. So for those of you who might not know Scott Hanselman is the Vice President of Developer Technologies at Microsoft. But outside of his work, he's a teacher, he's a blogger, he's a podcaster. I've been doing that for over 13 years. I've been blogging
20 years now, man.
Oh, 20 years now. Blogging for over 20 years.
Yeah, man.
It's been quite a long time. Probably for some of our viewers and listeners were even born.
Oh man. I always like people like, you taught me C# in high school. I'm like, don't say that, man. Don't make it worse. I had a birthday yesterday.
Fun fact, when I was learning to code in 2010, I saw one of your videos, I think with the Scott and Red one. No.
Oh, Scott Hunter or Scott Guthrie?
No, Scott Guthrie.
Yeah, the red shirt guy.
Yeah, the red shirt. That's the way I named them. There's Scott Hunter. You and him are the lesser Scots.
Right, yeah. 'Cause Scott Guthrie, for folks that may not know, is the president of Azure. Like he helped invent the cloud. And he's like a super Scott. And there's this joke that you have to be named Scott to work at Microsoft. It's not true. But Scott Hunter and I worked on .NET. So you need two Scots to equal one of the great Scott. So we are the lesser Scots. If you want Guthrie to come to your conference and he says no, then you'll get two Scots for the price of one.
That's amazing. So he's a blogger, as I mentioned. To be honest, if I was to describe Scott as a person, the way I know him, I probably say words would fail me, because he's like the legend of programming. And he's humble. No, he says, I'm a programmer at Microsoft. If you ask him, I'm a programmer at Microsoft, but then he's the one that leads the developer communities at Microsoft. He's responsible for the outreach and everything developers do at Microsoft, which is something quite amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about what that kind of work entails, being a VP of developer technologies?
So developer community, right? So the idea is that there are these, over the years, we've had names like evangelist. I don't like that term, because evangelism is a bad thing. If you are going into another person's space and telling them that their religion is wrong and you should do our religion. So we used to, Microsoft, have developer evangelists, and they would go and they'd say, you should convert from your religion to Microsoft religion, right? And the evangelism, I think, is kind of, I'm glad you're excited about your technology, but I don't want to do C#. And then we had the term advocate, which I think is a really good word, because an advocate is really an advocate for your problem that you want to solve. So if you have a problem, we will advocate for you. We will help you. But ultimately, I was a community member before I got to Microsoft. I will be a community member after. Microsoft is my job, but it is not my identity. So I like the idea of being a member of the community that just happens to work on the inside. So if you need something, we can help make it happen. So what does that mean if you need something? Well, you have an idea. You go out and you Google with Bing, learn C#. I need to make sure the SEO is good. Did you land on the right website? Were there videos there for you? Were there good documentation? Was there a certificate you could get? Did you learn what you needed? Did you get the docs you wanted? If there was a bug, could you file the bug? So everything from the moment you Google with Bing all the way to the moment where you deploy to Azure and you launch the great new startup for the world. Was the community there? Was Microsoft there to help you be successful? And if you use all of our tools, great. If you use one of our tools, great. If you don't pay us a cent, you do the whole thing in VS Code, you do the whole thing in .NET, and you never pay Microsoft $1, I still am working for you. I'm just working on the inside. So I have 1 foot inside and 1 foot outside. And I have a whole great team that does that work with me.
That's amazing. So that's actually amazing to know. And it sort of simplifies the meaning of being a VP at Microsoft. It means you're responsible for, if I want to learn how to code, I've been writing code for 10 years and I want to write better code. I want to know how to deploy to Azure or use one of the Microsoft technologies as a developer. It means that your team and the people you lead are responsible for ensuring that I am successful as a developer.
Exactly. And then if I don't own that team, because my team is small, I know somebody. So I live in Portland, Oregon, on the west coast of the U.S. And on the radio, there's a guy who, if you want to buy a ring to ask your partner to marry you, he has a diamond shop. Okay. And on the radio, this guy says at the end of the advertisement, "You've got a friend in the diamond business." And we all love this guy because we're like, I don't know anybody who works in rings, right? I don't know anybody at the jewelry shop. But then you always go, but you have a friend in the diamond business. And then you go to his business and you say, hey, Dara sent me. Oh, well, you're my friend. Any friend of his is a friend of mine. So I'm trying to be your friend in the diamond business. But in this case, I'm your buddy at Microsoft. And I want everyone to feel like a Microsoft advocate, a cloud advocate, or anyone who's working in this space is their friend who works for the company. Because it feels better if you know somebody in the space, right? And I know that both you and Patemi do that kind of work as well, where you want someone to say, oh, I know a person. Here, let me introduce you. And that warm introduction makes the difference.
Definitely does. And thanks for all the work you do, at Microsoft, trying to make the world a better place, one community outreach at a time. So you've been at Microsoft now for about 16 years, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It feels like 15, but yes, it's been a minute. It's been a minute, about half of my career.
Yeah. So I know for most of the folks in my generation, at least that I know, we change our careers like iPhones. Like every year, every 2 years.
Too many times, too often.
Yeah. For someone who has spent that amount of time at a company, working for one company, of course, in different roles, and some of those roles spanning 5 years, 6 years, what's it been like working that long for one company, and what has been the motivation to stay at that company, at Microsoft?
That is an excellent question. I think that there's two answers. First is, I appreciate that folks right now feel that they need to leave a company after a year or two. But I would respectfully offer, as an old person, offering advice to a person who is slightly less old, that organizational change, real fundamental change to an organization is not done in months. It's going to take a year or 2 or 3. And I would rather have on a resume 2 or 3 years here than 6 months to a year here. So that's my first bit of advice, is like, if you say, I worked a year at Apple and a year at Netflix and a year, like, that's very impressive. But did you fundamentally change the way those companies did business in a year? It's very unlikely, because it's just not possible. So I would encourage people, as long as it's not a toxic environment, see if you can get as much as you can. Squeeze the fruit as much as possible before you decide to throw away the rind. The reason that I stayed at Microsoft is that it's a different company every 4 or 5 years. So just when I get sick of it, we'll go on opensource.net. Or just when I get sick of it, we'll come out with Azure. Or just when I get sick of it, we come out with WSL and Windows Subsystem for Linux. And then I get excited again, and I'll go, all right, I'll do it. I'll stick around for a little bit. You know what I mean?
So there's just new fun coming up when you're just about tired.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe something cool will come tomorrow, right?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, that's interesting to know. So I think a piece of advice we can pick out of there is you want to effect a change in a company, but then you're not seeing the change. You don't say, oh, in 6 months I can effect the change. If you want to see the change, you stick around to make it work.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do recognize that there's privilege involved in me saying you should stick around. Now, if your boss sucks and the company sucks and everything sucks, yeah, you should leave. But if that happens 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row, and maybe it wasn't the companies that sucked, maybe there was a challenge that you need to look inward. But if you can stick around somewhere for 2 or 3 years, you can change their business. You can change how they hire. You can change how they write software, and you can learn a lot. So then rather than, going to a company and trying to get a promo as you go there and bouncing around, how do you become someone with a little more equity, with a little more ownership in the company? I went to Microsoft 15 years ago to opensource.net. That was the point. I met Scott Guthrie at a party with Tim O'Reilly called Foo Camp, and I met him on the back lawn, and I talked to him about Ruby on Rails and how .NET needed a Ruby on Rails, and we went and we made ASP.NET Model View Controller, and we made it open source, and that's when we started open sourcing .NET. No one thought it was possible, and and a whole team of hundreds worked on that and made that happen. That's not something we could have done in 6 months.
Definitely not.
Yeah, so just something to think about. And again, I want to point out, if your company sucks, leave your company. But if you can find a company that has enough cool stuff going on, like let's say I got tired of DevTools tomorrow, I'll go work in Xbox. Right?
That's super cool then.
I mean, there's enough cool stuff happening at a company like Microsoft. That's cool. But I could happily go and work at a startup. I just already did the startup life. I did startups in the 90s. I worked in the Bay Area, and I did all that stuff during when .com was just starting. So I'll leave the startups to you.
Yeah. Now, actually, talking about the early times, the 90s, sort of brought a question that's been on our mind. So, what was it like at the time you started coding? Like when you started into this IT field, what was it like back then?
Oh man, so it would have been like 1989, 1988, and I would have been 14 when I started coding in C. And I was sitting with my buddy Jack Elmore at his house, and he was teaching me pointers in C. But before that, I was on an Apple II computer, and I was learning in BASIC. And before that, I learned on an Apple I with a thing called Logo. Have you ever seen Logo? You have a little turtle, and you say go forward 4, turn 90, go forward 3, turn 180. And you would basically draw circles and flowers and things. They would teach you looping. So imagine if you're writing instructions to move a little turtle, and the turtle just draws a line, and you maybe draw a flower petal. Then you rotate 45 degrees and you draw another flower petal. And then you for loop around, and then now the thing is drawing a cool flower petal. That was like the peak of technology back in the day. So I started then.
How large were the monitors back then to be able to draw those flowers?
Oh man, then we got a little robot that was very small, 2 wheels and a piece of wood and a Sharpie, like a Sharpie pen. Yeah. And then you would draw the same flower petal on the ground. So you'd have a really, really, really long wire, like imagine a long hard drive cable. Mm-hmm. And then the computer would do the same thing, except instead of telling the little turtle on the screen, it would move the wheels. And then you'd have a giant piece of butcher paper, and we would draw the circles. And even now, that's a cool demo. To move a robot with a pen and draw circles and draw flowers and stuff? Come on. 30 years later, that's still awesome.
It is still very awesome, especially in the age of chat GPT and AI and all the things we can do with it now.
Yeah, well, like even like right now, literally, I am building an Apple computer on my desk.
Oh, yeah, I saw
from a
that
kit. I've been working on this on TikTok, and people are like, "Why?" But like, why not, man? Like, because it's freaking awesome. Like, it's cool. Why wouldn't like just do what makes you happy? Build something new.
That is super nice. Okay, now this is, well, hopefully it's a fun question. One thing I know you like a lot is tacos and Beyonce.
Mm-hmm. In that order.
In that order. Okay. Tell me about that.
Okay, well, so you want to talk about tacos or you want to talk about Beyonce? Because so tacos
first.
Tacos are great. So okay, so here in the West Coast of the United States, I live in Oregon. We have a large Mexican community, and about half the kids in my kids' school speak Spanish. So we kind of grew up. We all took Spanish in school. So tacos have been a little bit Americanized because there's like official Mexican tacos, and then there's like the Americanized version of the tacos. Is a big part of American culture. So like Mexican American culture involves tacos, and tacos are the perfect food. Like, everyone's got that food. If you say, what's the one thing you would eat every day for the rest of your life and not get tired of it? Tacos.
Tacos.
Right. And then I've got a sign actually in the kitchen that says, you can't please everybody. You're not a taco. Right. That's the only thing that can please everyone. Right. So then the other thing that should be able to please everyone is Beyonce. And anyone who doesn't believe that, I'll fight them.
So if you don't want Scott's trouble, but I love Beyonce.
Yes, exactly. Don't talk bad things about Beyonce or tacos.
All right. Duly noted. Okay. Now most of the community things you do, like boils around teaching, telling people about stuff. You have the series on YouTube, computer stuff they didn't teach you, where you just teach random computer stuff, and then those interesting topics. For people who are just wanting to start, like computing, IT, anything really, I'll probably ask, where does the motivation to create those kind of content come from when they are not work related?
That's a good question. A long time ago, when I became, so this is going to be a little random, but it'll make sense in a second. So I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm not a diabetic like maybe your auntie or your uncle or your grandparents are, where they take a pill and they got the sugars. I'm a type 1 diabetic, which means that my pancreas does not work, and I will die in a week or two if I don't have insulin injected. So for many, many, many years, I took needles, to stay alive. And now I have an insulin pump, which is basically automated shots. And that happened when I was 19. Now, diabetics, if you're familiar, don't die of old age, right? We die of diabetes. So it really makes you think about your longevity. It makes you think about how long you're going to be around. And when you get diagnosed with something that's an autoimmune disease that is not curable, this is not something I can fix with yoga or tea or anything. I have a non-working pancreas, right? 100 years ago, I'd be dead in a week, no question. And it's constantly something I have to monitor every minute. Even right now, as I sit here, I am looking at my blood sugar and I'm thinking about it. So that made me think about, like, what can I do with the time that I have here? Because I don't know if am I going to get hit by a truck or am I going to die of diabetes? Like, what's going to come first? Mm-hmm. So I try to be really efficient with my time. And then people would email me questions. Hey, I saw you at this presentation and I have a question about something, right? And you and I talk on Twitter and stuff like that. But even if you personally emailed me a question, you're a great guy, but I'm probably not going to spend an hour writing up an answer. Mm-hmm. And then sending you like a page of text. And then you're just going to reply, thanks for your time, right? Or you're going to email me and you're going to say, hey, can I pick your brain? I only got so many hours, man. Like I got limited hours. In a year, there's 2,080 working hours, 2,080. So if I hang out with you for one or two of those, we're starting to count percentages of time. But you have a good question and I want to help. So how do I balance I want to help you, but I only have so many years left. So I started doing videos. I started answering questions when I got emailed with videos, and then I would answer your question and then send you a link to the video. Yeah. So like literally last week, a priest emailed me a sermon that he was working on for church. I don't know the guy. And he's like, I can't get Microsoft Word to behave, And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to work on this thing for an hour and then mail it to the priest and have him say, good job. Like, maybe that'll get me into heaven, but it's still no guarantee. But it was a great question. And I recognized that it's not just that one person. There's probably dozens of people who have this problem. Mm-hmm. So I decided to hit record, and I spent a half an hour fixing the document live on YouTube. And then I sent him a link, and he was thrilled. And now that YouTube video's got 3,000 views. I mean, it could have got 10. What if it only had 10 views? That's 10 more people than the one guy.
Yeah.
So that's how the whole teacher thing started. And then I started teaching at the local university and the local state college. And I realized that you can scale yourself and live longer by teaching. I was in a meeting literally this morning, and I was mentioning how this young person on the call was doing such a great job, and I complimented her boss. And the boss said, yeah, I've been mentoring this person. And then they said, and I didn't expect this, they said, you, Scott, got me into C# back in 2007. Didn't know that, right? That's a way of living longer. So immortality happens by teaching the next generation. That's the long, long answer to your question. Starting with, I have a fear of death, therefore I'm going to do as much as I can and teach as many people as I can while I'm still here.
Those are real deep words of wisdom right there.
I don't know. It's something, man.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So one of the main things we talk about on the show is, yes, you are the great Scott Hanselman. But then we talk about challenges people face every day. Yes, we mentioned your diabetes, but as a developer, as an IT person, maybe now, maybe in the past, like, what's that one challenge that you've had, and then how were you able to scale through the challenge to overcome it?
I would say 99% of the challenges that I have found in the tech world have nothing to do with tech. It's not the staying up all night fighting with a for loop. I couldn't tell you that. Like, I'm sure they've happened, but I don't have like a memory. My memory is not filled with fighting with syntax. I'm currently fighting with this computer next to me here, and I'm frustrated with it. But I'm not going to remember that. I'm going to remember the success. What I really remember is all the squishy humans that are involved, because they teach you all the algorithms and everything in class, and then you go to work and you're like, oh man, I love the tech, but all these freaking humans, they're so squishy with their feelings and their emotions and their opinions, right? Tech is about working together in a team. And, it's basically group projects from school, from university at scale. So if you hate group projects in university, you're going to hate working, because it's all about group projects. But if you can make 4 people working feel like they got 8 people worth of works done, then you're going to have a lot more fun. So that's the hard problem, is humans, not the tech.
Humans, not the tech. Humans, not the tech.
Right? Nobody wants to work with a jerk. Don't be a jerk.
So be the nice person, so the next person can also be nice.
Well, I want to call that out. I used to say nice, and someone on Twitter said you should say kind, because nice can be fake, right? You can pretend to be nice, but being genuinely kind is a different thing. So I try to be as kind as I can. But if I don't like you, I'll be nice to your face, I guess. Kindness lasts forever, though.
Definitely does. All right. We don't want to take so much of your time, so because of course we know you're busy. End of day, there's family time,
and I have to make dinner later, actually. But I'm okay.
Exactly. So I think one last question before we wrap up. Being a person, and I think you've mentioned it earlier on, that you're intentional about your time, about the things you do, making time for things that are important. But then people want to know, I know for someone like me, I have just one daughter, and it's a struggle really to create content like this. Like, I have to literally be in the middle of the night to do things like this when everybody else is sleeping.
Right. It's midnight for you right now for the folks that are listening, and you accommodated my schedule and your schedule and stayed up late for this, which is to be commended.
Yeah, thank you very much. So how do you balance? You have 2 boys,
Mm-hmm.
you have a wife, you have a family, you have a job that you need to show up at. How do you balance that whole thing, family, life, work, and out of work community stuff?
I think the challenge is that in a world right now where social media has everyone feeling like they are less than, like, the feed is algorithmically designed to make you feel bad about yourself, right? So if you are having a bad day and you're working hard and you're stressed out of work and you're stressed out at home and you think you're going to get less stressed out scrolling through Twitter or Instagram, and it algorithmically feeds you all of your friends going overseas and private jets and startup hustle nonsense, that is not going to make you feel better. So I consciously try not to measure myself against others. Right? I know you have a big audience. You have a big international audience. You've got folks that think that the grass is greener wherever the next place they want to go is. It's very likely that the grass is different. It may not necessarily be greener. Nobody is going to die and then say on their deathbed, I didn't work enough. You know what I mean? Your kid will remember when you are gone. They will not, you want them to remember that you're there. So I've gotten a reputation. It's actually a negative reputation. When I go to conferences, I do the thing, I shake hands, I hang out for a little bit, and I'm home for dinner. And people have said, man, Hanselman, you should stay for 2 or 3 more days and spend time with the community. My son is 18, right? There are 36 more weeks before he goes to college. So you want me to give you one of those? Like, I appreciate you. I want to see your conference. I'll come and I'll do a talk. But I am not going to pick your conference over my kid because he's only here for 36 more weeks. And if you think about that in terms of how many more times you're going to see your parents, how many more times you're going to hang out with, your family, it makes decision making a lot easier. So my answer is do less, not do more.
Do less, not more.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you do nothing, man, like, do as little as you can. I'm not saying be lazy. I'm not saying be sloppy. You sprint. We talk about sprinting in the context of a scrum, right? Show up to work, do amazing work, and then be done. But don't go to bed and then sit on your phone and try to work and then wake up in the middle of the night and try to work. You know what I mean? You got to compartmentalize. When work is done, there will always be more work. There will always be more work.
The reward for good work is more work.
Yeah. And if you email someone at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, you just taught them that you will email them at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. You are teaching people how to treat you, right? Like, if I emailed you suddenly and you replied back, well, now I know you're available at all hours, right? And now I'm going to abuse that. But if you said, sorry, it's family time, I'll get with you on Monday morning, you would not be offended if I said that to you. So why would I be offended if you said that to me? That's where we talk about toxic bosses versus non-toxic bosses. If your boss is abusing you like that, you gotta find a better situation. So work-life balance literally is remembering that you are working to live, not living to work. I feel like I rambled too much in this podcast. What do you think?
That is real good, actually.
You sure?
You're like dosing out those bundles of wisdom just in punches. Like,
okay.
Take this.
Now I'm just fishing for compliments. You're just being nice. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
That's real good. And I think for our listeners also, they would get the idea. They would get that being in tech, being an IT person, being a developer, it's not all about debugging all the time. It's all about work for your money, work for your life, get paid, then rest. One thing I told one of my mentees 2 weeks ago was like, I didn't sleep all night. I'm like, dude, learn to say no to those people. And it came back to me a week after. It was like, uncle, what you told me, I did it. I said no to someone, and then I finished all my projects. I slept well, and then it was like he was going to adopt that strategy. I called it the vitamin N for him. So take the vitamin N and use it. Say
That's
no,
awesome.
and prioritize for them.
I saw this wonderful thing. I was on Instagram, so here I am being a hypocrite. I was on Instagram, and this woman was saying that she replied to a request, "My plate is as full as I would like it." She didn't say my plate is overflowing. She didn't say I'm overwhelmed. She said my plate is as full as I want. And that's a way of setting boundaries. And I think that's really important. This is where you've got to get off hustle culture, Twitter, and hustle culture Instagram. And I know I'm not Nigerian. I'm not African. I do have folks on the continent, but the thing that I love about Nigerians is hustle. And the things that I worry about Nigerians is hustle. Because when the guy next to you or the gal next to you says that the only way for you to succeed is to work 20 hours a day and never talk to your family, and that, you know what I mean? Like, it's the amazing thing about Nigerian community is how hard they work. But man, you've got to find balance. It doesn't have to be it's 20 hours or it's lazy. You know what I mean? You can have a 10-hour day and you can get a lot done.
Definitely.
But it doesn't have to be to the bone. And that's where I want to make sure that people understand that I say sprint, but remember that life is a marathon, and you're no good to me dead. So if you burn out, then we're not going to be able to hang out.
God, yeah, definitely. And I think one of your older podcasts I listened to, where you talk about pacing yourself, to have paces where you do things in short, little phases. And I think it was really, really, helpful for me. That was the time I actually decided, I don't need to, go ahead and make all the videos in one go. I could make it 2 days a week, and then next week I do other ones. That way it has helped me a lot. So we're gonna round up here. I want to say thank you very much for coming on and honoring our invitation. He's Scott Hanselman. Once again, he runs his podcast every Thursday. A show will go live for you. He's been doing that 900 episodes now.
Yeah.
900 plus episodes now.
Yeah. 930. And I want to remind people that I have transcripts that you can search. So this is every Thursday for almost 20 years. There's going to be a show with somebody you know, somebody you want to know. And if you like this podcast, I would think that you would enjoy my podcast as well. And I have a podcast with a similar name as your podcast.
Yes,
Isn't that funny?
This Developer's Life, where you just talk about your life journey. I listened to 5.0.2 last night. Mm-hmm. That was really something.
Yeah. So I was told that This Dev Life is a bit of an homage, and you started a podcast after having maybe listened to some of ours, which makes me very happy.
Yeah, thank you. You were the inspiration.
Very cool. Yeah. People can find me online just like they can find y'all. And I would love it if they would listen to my show and leave a review as well.
Definitely. We'll drop the links to everything you can find about Scott in the show notes and the video description if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks very much, Scott, for coming. And, as we say, till we'll come your way again with yet another episode of This Dev Live, stay safe and goodbye.